forklift trucks. Industry cannot get by without them. It is estimated that there are some 325,000 operating within Australia. However, by nature, these are potentially dangerous pieces of equipment. Employers have serious obligations to ensure safe systems of work are in place, and safety procedures are not ignored. Studies have shown the two most likely scenarios for forklift fatalities are involvement of pedestrians and counterbalance forklift lateral rollover. This video program is designed to address the responsibilities of the employer and forklift operator in identifying and controlling risks in the workplace. It outlines a delegated responsibility and general hazards in the operation of forklifts. However, these cannot be considered the only hazards. Specific hazards can be revealed in the owner's manual of your machine. Further hazard identification will be required in relation to operation in your specific circumstances. These forklift operators have one thing in common: their professionalism and skill. In the right hands, these specialist machines can lift very fragile or heavy loads with equal safety and ease, lifting to heights of up to 14 meters in some cases, with accuracy and efficiency. Any company that requires safe, reliable and efficient materials handling needs dedicated, focused operators. It's an important, mutually rewarding partnership. What neither of you need is an accident. If forklift operation is your living, then forklift safety is your business. Most accidents can be prevented. This video is broken into 5 chapters and addresses safe practices and requirements for operation of counterbalance and reach trucks within Australia. Take your time to get to understand each chapter before moving on. As a professional forklift operator, you should know how your forklift works and what its limitations are. Then get to know safe work practices and always operate within safety limits. The first rule in forklift truck safety is to observe and understand the operating instructions as laid out by the manufacturer in the operating instructions and risk assessments. The next rule is to know and adhere to the truck's lifting capacity. In understanding forklift capacity, it is important you understand the forklift's stability principles. Your normal counterbalance forklift truck, like this Toyota, has a heavy counterweight at the back. When a large load is lifted, this counterweight will keep the truck's rear wheels firmly on the ground. You can see from this graphic that the truck's front wheels act as a fulcrum or balance point between the counterweight and the load. As long as the truck's load is close to the front wheels, the counterweight can keep the rear wheels on the ground. It's the same principle that allows a small child to lift her much larger dad off the ground on a seesaw. It's because of this principle of leverage that a lift truck's capacity is always specified by giving not only the maximum weight it can lift, but also by giving the maximum distance between the center of the load's weight and the face of the tines. This is called the load center distance, and at a given lifting height, usually full mast height unless specified otherwise, it is not permitted to lift any more than the capacity shown on the load capacity plate. On this sample rating plate, the truck's capacity is shown as 1,400 kilograms with a 600 millimeter load center. This load warning notice also gives other critical details, such as the maximum forward tilting angles, where inflatable tires are fitted, tire pressure, and maximum lift height. This is with the mast vertical and at a lift height of 4.3 meters. This rating also takes into account the Toyota E62 side shift. While this truck has a nominal capacity of 1,800 kilograms or 1.8 tons, ratings in Australia are usually taken at 600 millimeter load centers and at maximum lift height. This is because standard-sized Australian pallets are approximately 1,200 millimeters square. However, a capacity load whose load center is more than 600 millimeters from the face of the fork will cause the truck to tilt very quickly. It's just like the father moving away from the fulcrum or balance point of the seesaw. So the message here is to be sure with large and bulky loads that you always check not only the weight of the load, but also the distance that the load center will be away from the face of the tines. If the load you are to lift exceeds the maximum capacity shown on the load capacity plate, it will have to be lifted in segments, or you'll have to use a larger forklift. One last thing to remember about load capacity is this. The use of attachments, such as a jib or slippers, will generally reduce the load capacity of your forklift truck. Not only do these attachments add their own weight, but they also extend the load center distance. So before operating a truck with any attachments, always read the specifications for the derated load capacity. Another factor you should be aware of while operating a forklift truck is lateral or sideways stability. It might seem strange, but the largest number of rollover accidents occur when the forklift is unladen. These accidents often happen because drivers are unaware of the suspension system of most forklift trucks. To accommodate uneven surfaces with minimum effect on a load, the rear of the truck is supported by a pivot pin in the center of the axle. This three-point suspension is what's called the stability triangle. As long as the combined center of gravity of the truck and its load remains inside this stability triangle, the truck won't tip up. But if the center of gravity moves outside that triangle, the truck will start to tip up. And here's how it might happen. Suppose a heavy load is lifted and the mast is tilted back. The combined center of gravity will move back also. At first glance, you might think that this will make the truck more stable. But notice how much closer the center of gravity is now to the edge of the stability triangle. The same situation applies when the forklift is unladen, which explains why so many rollover accidents happen with unladen forklifts. And the problem gets even worse when the truck is driven up a ramp. You can see that the center of gravity is now right on the edge of the stability triangle. Just a slight bump or a dip in the floor will cause the forklift to tip over. For this reason, it is recommended that in these situations, forklifts with wider stability bases are used, such as dual-wheel forklifts, or the Toyota forklifts with SAS. In any case, it is essential that you follow the safe operating procedures in the chapters following this one. As part of the ongoing pursuit of excellence in safety and reliability, Toyota are proud to present the new Series 7 forklift. This state-of-the-art vehicle has many safety features which will minimize many of the hazards we have discussed so far in this video. The 7 Series differs to all other forklifts due to its system of active stability. The SAS system is a computer-controlled system including features like automatic fork leveling, an active mast rear tilt speed control, a key lift interlock which prevents movement of the tines unless the engine is running, an active mast front tilt angle control, and on the 4-wheel models, an active control rear stabilizer. The computer monitors over 3,000 different scenarios. The rocking rear axle can automatically lock when instability is detected, and mast functions can be slowed or inhibited if the load becomes too heavy. Another responsibility of the professional forklift operator is to carry out a site hazard identification prior to operating. The aim is not only to avoid or protect against hazards, but to eliminate or control them. At the top of this list is to ensure that pedestrians are excluded from any areas where a forklift operates. Forklifts and other mobile equipment should only be operated in areas where pedestrians and forklifts are separated by clearly designated and enforced pedestrian zones, and preferably by physical barriers. In certain states in Australia, this practice is being enforced by the authorities. Ensure that your site has appropriate and effective pedestrian exclusion zones in place. For example, fencing, barriers and gates or high-capacity bollards can be used in certain cases. Even more effective practice is providing pedestrian alternate access such as overhead walkways or access to work areas from outside or under a building. Another important issue is speed. Speed increases the number and severity of accidents. Methods of controlling forklift speed are discussed later in this program. Another important matter for forklift operation is the avoidance of power lines or other sources of electricity, such as conduits. Some other hazards to consider include low doorways, overhead service lines, pipes, wires, beams, sprinkler systems, in fact, any obstructions or other equipment working in the area. Be aware of narrow aisles and other tight places where you'll need to watch your side clearances. Make sure you know where there are any dangerous goods or materials, bridges and surrounding buildings, railway tracks or humps or dips in the surface, or any other hazards unique to your area. Be aware of changes in lighting. Driving from within a building with artificial or low light to an outside area with bright natural light may mean that your eyes take some time to adjust to the different light levels. The same applies in reverse when driving from outside to within a building. Always travel at a speed that allows your eyes to adjust within a short distance of travel, or if necessary, stop completely until your vision returns to normal. Also take into account the noise levels emitted by your forklift and any other equipment nearby. Most forklifts are designed for hard, level surfaces. Unless your forklift is specifically designed for such, avoid unsealed areas, as the heavy weight of the forklift may cause sinking, and forklifts have little traction on such surface. Also have potholes, bumps and dips repaired, even in sealed surfaces, so as to eliminate lateral or sideways rocking of your forklift. Remember, if you identify any hazards, such as a spill, you need to not only sort out the hazard, but sort out the source of the hazard as well. Finally, make sure your forklift is suitable for the job at hand. Is the lift capacity of the forklift sufficient, and does it allow a safety margin? Can the forklift attachment handle the job? Is the forklift designed to operate on the maximum gradients on your worksite, such as ramps or drainage slopes? Are you wearing the minimum appropriate clothing and personal protective equipment? What special requirements are there for work on your site? Are you healthy and fit for work? Looking, planning ahead, thinking, using good judgment. These are the marks of a reliable and professional forklift truck operator. As you're driving around, stay alert and keep your eyes peeled for any sign of danger. Good housekeeping is not just for cleanliness, it reduces the risk of accidents. Remember the hierarchy of controls. Don't just protect against a hazard, eliminate or control it. Before you start operating this or any forklift, you must complete a pre-operation inspection. It is a requirement for all forklift operators. This will include a walk-around inspection to check for vehicle posture. Look underneath for oil or water leakage, loose parts, or exterior damage. Now for a closer inspection for faults or any wear. Start at the front of the forklift and check items including, but not limited to, the tines for damage, wear, cracking. Check that locking pins are in place. Check the load carriage and the load backrest, the lift chains, hydraulic hoses, cylinders for leaks or damage, the mast for damage or cracking. Check the tires for pressure and damage or tread depth. Check the wheels for damage and make sure the wheel nuts are tight. The grab handles are in place. Check the overhead guard for damage. The seat is secure. Check the counterweight bolts are in place. Now it's time to go under the bonnet. In the case of battery forklifts, wear safety glasses and do a check of the electrolyte level. Check all the fluid levels, the security of the battery, for leakage, etc. Inspect the cables for damage or wear, as well as the connector covers. Make sure the battery case lock is in place. Now close the bonnet down, ensuring not to leave any foreign objects behind. Now you are ready to mount the forklift. Always use 3 points of contact when getting on or off. Adjust the seat, mirrors and steering to your comfort position. Now fasten the seatbelt and check that all seatbelt interlocks are operational. Check the forklift is in neutral. Then test all lights and warning devices. Check any gauges for warnings, fuel and battery levels. Finally, make sure the load capacity plate is legible. Then start or power up the forklift for testing of the hydraulic functions. Test the hydraulics to their full extent to ensure smooth operation and no leakage. Also, do not forget to ensure that any installed protective devices are operational, such as this one, designed to prevent operation unless the seatbelt is fastened and the handbrake is on, or such as speed limiters like this one. It can not only be set to reduce speed during normal travel, but can reduce travel speed when the mast is raised over a certain height. Properly installed speed limiters do not affect engine speed, only travel speed. Lower the tines to travel level and move the forklift enough to test that the steering and brakes are effective. Lastly, if you have to change an LPG bottle, follow this procedure. First, make sure that you are in a well-ventilated area away from naked flames or ignition sources. Put on your leather safety gloves and glasses. Turn off the gas supply at the bottle. Allow the forklift's engine to run until it stalls, then switch it off. Undo the takeoff valve. Release the securing latch for the swing-down bottle bracket. Pull up the pin and swing the bracket to the side. Pull out the second pin and push the bottle down until it locks in position. Change over bottles, ensuring that the new bottle is oriented correctly. Then follow the procedure in reverse and turn on the gas supply. Before you remove your safety gear, look, feel and listen for any signs of gas leakage. If there is, shut off the gas supply again and call for expert help. And if you notice any malfunction on your forklift, place a danger tag upon it and report it immediately to your supervisor. It may well be a safety risk. Additionally, driving the truck further may cause major damage. Statistics show us that the main factors in forklift accidents are pedestrian proximity and sideways rollover. As a professional forklift operator, you must understand the procedures that will help minimize these risks. Often, a contributing factor in these incidents is speed of travel. Speed limiting is highly recommended to reduce the risk of sideways rollover and collision. Speed limiting devices can operate with set parameters, such as zones or lift height, and often with little or no effect on productivity. In this case, the operator is travelling downhill, then turns across the slope. This could easily become a lateral or sideways rollover situation. You can avoid this kind of catastrophe easily by being conscious of safety first, and by following a few simple rules of safe operation. Remember to always tilt the mast back just enough to keep the load securely on the tines. Tilting the mast back further reduces sideways stability. Be especially cautious about tilting the mast with the load up high. This can reduce sideways stability to the point where even the smallest dip, bump, or unlevel ground can cause the forklift to roll over sideways. When traveling, always keep the tines as low to the ground as possible. Level with the front axle should be considered a maximum height. The lower the better, so long as there is sufficient ground clearance. If you drive with a load elevated on the mast, you're inviting trouble. Maybe this operator thinks he will save time traveling such a short distance. But what if he has to stop suddenly? The brakes will stop the forklift all right, but the load will want to keep going. And with the leverage it has way up on the mast, it will try to pull the truck over on its nose. This is made much worse when the truck tries to turn a corner. The load up there on the mast will tend to keep going straight ahead. Additionally, traveling with the mast raised increases the risk of striking overhead obstacles. To keep maximum stability, when stacking or lowering a load, the load must be lowered prior to turning. To turn the forklift whilst the load is elevated vastly increases the likelihood of lateral rollover, due to the center of gravity being much higher than in a lowered position. Forklift lifting carriages raise a certain amount before the mast channels do. This is called free lift. Once this begins, the mast moves from its collapsed height, and a serious accident could be the result. Watch out for power lines, but remember the procedure if you ever end up striking power lines. First, warn others to stay clear. Remain in the forklift and have the power isolated immediately. Do not touch the forklift and the ground at the same time, or you may be electrocuted. However, if you keep the specified distances, this should not occur. Now, if the unthinkable happens and the forklift does begin to tip, the fact that you are wearing your seatbelt will greatly reduce your chances of serious injury or death by keeping you within the safety zone of the overhead guard. Also, in most states and territories of Australia, it is now a legal requirement to wear the seatbelt. Remember the safety decals you read. Wear your seatbelt. Don't try to jump out. Brace your feet, hold tight, and lean away from the direction of the fall. Your basic job begins each time you pick up a load. But before you move under it, before you pull a lift lever, stop and think. The question isn't, can the load be lifted, but can it be lifted safely? Before you begin, make sure the tines are as wide apart as the pallet or load will allow. Wide fork spacing keeps the load stable. Next, take a good look at the material to be lifted. Is it stacked well, or is it loose and unstable? If necessary, restack a load properly, or tie it together to make sure that nothing falls off. You should always remember that the time before you pick up a load is one of your best opportunities to prevent an accident. Before picking up any load, you must know that both its weight and its load center is within the capacity of your forklift truck. You must also arrange it so that the load is evenly distributed, or if that's not possible, the heavy end must be towards the forklift's load backrest. Remember to check the load specifications every time you start work on a different truck. If the load is too heavy or too bulky, it should be broken down so that your forklift can handle it safely, or it should be lifted by a bigger capacity forklift. Dual drive wheel forklifts are always recommended due to their extra side stability. Before you carry a high load, such as a double stack, you must be sure that the load will be supported by the forklift's load backrest. This includes individual boxes. You may, however, secure them by shrink wrapping or a similar system. Also, be aware that high loads can reduce your forklift's side stability by raising the combined center of gravity. Loads should be kept to a height of 1200 millimeters where practical. Always keep every part of you within the driver's compartment. Never have your hands or feet near the mast assembly. Also ensure when operating a reach truck that all parts of your body are within the operator compartment. Never hang your leg, knee or foot out. Just one little mistake can result in serious injury or even death. Now you can go ahead and pick up the load. It's stable, it's within the capacity of your truck, and the mast is clear. Your next concern is to safely transport the load to its destination. Remember to keep your tines down to axle height or lower. However, in the case of operating a reach truck, the load must be raised enough just to clear the reach legs and to allow the mast to be retracted fully. Never travel with the mast extended on a reach truck, as this prevents sufficient weight being placed on the steering and brake wheel, and also reduces side stability. Always make sure you can see where you're going. This is obviously the wrong way to transport this load. The operator should be driving in reverse. And remember, prior to traveling in either direction, to make sure the way is clear. If you are intending to travel backwards, look over both shoulders and sound the horn before you move, and then look in your direction of travel 100% of the time. This operator has a real problem. He can't see that they're about to hit the door. He should have turned around and driven in reverse. A forklift truck is designed to be driven backwards just as easily as forwards, so whenever you carry a load that blocks your vision, drive in reverse and you'll be able to see exactly where you're going. Look at the floor or roadway ahead and avoid any bumps or holes that might jolt your load loose. A dip in the floor of anything greater than about 20 millimeters can be enough to tip certain forklifts, so be sure to have any floor imperfections repaired. Never drive over oil or other spills. Notify the maintenance department or your supervisor as soon as you can. If you do have to travel over a hump or bump in the surface ahead, it is better to go at it straight on. Unless the forklift was designed for rough terrain, the likelihood of sideways roll is increased. It is better to have the obstacle removed or the dip or hole repaired. Forklifts must be operated on hard level ground unless specified otherwise by the manufacturer. Always be aware of floor loading capacities. If your forklift truck can lift 2,500 kilograms, it probably weighs close to 4,000 kilograms by itself. Then, with a full capacity load, it starts to weigh up to 6,500 kilograms, or 6.5 tons. So check the specifications of your forklift truck for its actual weight, and be on the lookout for limited floor loading capacity, especially ramps, lifts, docks, and areas under construction. Be careful of rear end swing. Because the rear wheels steer a forklift truck, its rear wheels swing wide when you turn a corner. So start your turn near the inside of the corner to give the back of the truck some extra room on the outside of the turn. When driving, keep all your body inside the operator's compartment. You've only got one set of limbs and one head, so don't be careless. When you come to a blind corner, slow down and use your horn. And if your factory or warehouse has traffic mirrors, use them to ensure the way is clear. There are also other effective proximity warning devices now available. Be aware of where they are and how they operate. Now let's look at some special problems that arise, particularly when you're working on ramps and loading docks. When you are on a ramp, always drive with the load uphill of the truck. So you drive forwards when going up and reverse when coming down the ramp. Here's a special problem. The load here is so big that the operator can't see around it. So the operator's driving in reverse. That's what the operator's supposed to do for good visibility. But now the operator has to drive up this ramp. Should he drive up forwards or backwards? The load should be pointing uphill. What the operator has to do is to get a helper to be his eyes, to guide him from a safe distance and make sure the way ahead is clear. Loading dock areas can present a few special problems as well. When you are working in a loading dock area, be sure the trucks and trailers are secured against accidental movement before you start work. If one should roll forward, a serious accident could result, so always use the appropriate dock bridge plate of the correct capacity and make sure it is securely in place. Don't ever use a makeshift dock board. It will make things unnecessarily dangerous. Best practice requires that truck drivers should remain within their cabins or in special operator waiting areas so as to ensure that they are out of harm's way. Many forklift accidents involve the transport drivers. Never lift anyone on the tines or even on a pallet. It just isn't safe. And never carry passengers.
Pedestrian exclusion zone. Can you please go to the other side of the fence? Other side of the fence, please.
There's really no safe place for them to ride. Remember, pedestrians and forklifts just don't mix. People may be elevated by a forklift truck, as long as they are wearing appropriate personal protective equipment, but only when they are on an approved work platform that is securely fastened to a forklift. And the forklift must meet the minimum required lift capacities and other requirements as laid out in Australian Standard 2359 Parts 1 and 2. You must also make reference to your state or territory's statutory authority for any other regulations that may apply in your area. Work platforms must not be used for order or stock picking duties, and at no times can the forklift travel with the user in the platform. With battery electric forklifts, there are a few extra precautions to take. Battery electric reach trucks are designed to give virtual spin turns and to operate on a very smooth surface. Their small wheels are particularly sensitive to any surface irregularities, and a small dip or bump can dramatically lower the rating of the vehicle, especially when the mast is extended. And because electric trucks are so much quieter than internal combustion engine trucks, remember to use your horn and keep a sharp lookout. The use of flashing lights and reversing beepers is required on all forklift trucks unless your company has conducted a risk assessment and determined otherwise. Some states, such as Victoria, require fitment of both regardless. Please check with your local authority. If you are driving a battery electric forklift, in the case of an emergency such as a short circuit or fire, operate the power isolation device. Always remember to give way to all emergency vehicles. As a forklift operator, you should understand the safe use of slings and shackles. If necessary, you should arrange additional training. Your safety and those around you depends upon careful observance of the systems in place within your work area, as well as compliance with operating instructions. In the case of any accident or incident, you have a legal obligation to report it to your supervisor. When you park any forklift, it is important that further hazards are not created by doing so. Choose a suitable location to leave the parked forklift. Never block access ways, walkways, fire or emergency exits, first aid stations, refueling sites. Always park away from blind corners and never within 2 meters of a railway track. Before you get down from the forklift truck, put the truck into neutral, apply the parking brake, and lower the tines so that they rest on the ground. That way no one can run into them. Turn off the power or the engine, and to prevent unauthorized access, always remove the key. To prevent unauthorized usage, forklifts can now be fitted with sophisticated access control devices to work in tandem with your company's security system. Never swap your cards or PIN codes. Remember that the Toyota 7 Series forklift with SAS has key lift interlock to prevent accidental lowering of the mast with the key off. Always completely lower the tines with the tips touching the ground before switching off the engine. Get down from the forklift in most cases by coming off facing the forklift and ensuring that you have 3 points of contact at least. Never jump from the forklift as you may slip. If the forklift is LPG or CNG powered, turn off the gas to reduce the risk of leakage. As you can see, safe driving is no accident. It's a result of knowing your job, your forklift, and following safe work practices. For instance, mobile phones should be switched off while you work. All states and territories require that all operators of counterbalance or reach trucks are properly certified with an LF Class Certificate of Competency, which is your license to drive it. You will require the LO Class license if you wish to operate an elevating operator platform forklift, such as an order picker that can raise above 1.5 meters. Remember, safety is a matter of knowledge and attitude, of doing your job the right way every time. If you are unsure of anything, you should review the relevant previous chapter until you know it backwards. As a professional forklift operator, safety is your business.